The training field was alive with the sound of barking, shouting commands, and the clapping of hands from instructors as they guided the strong K9 dogs through another round of military drills. Dust rose into the air with each step of the dogs as they ran, leapt, and obeyed the voices of their handlers. These dogs were not ordinary pets. They were being trained to serve with the best soldiers in the world, the Navy SEALs, and every movement mattered. Precision, obedience, and trust were the pillars of this program. Most of the dogs passed their drills with near perfection, their sharp eyes locked on their handlers, waiting for the next signal. But among this pack was one dog who did not seem to belong. His name was Rex. Rex was a large German shepherd, his fur darker than most, his eyes full of intelligence but clouded with hesitation. While the other dogs ran straight lines and jumped through obstacles with grace, Rex often froze in the middle, unsure of where to go. Sometimes he would run too early, sometimes too late, and at times he would simply sit down as though the commands were not meant for him. His handler, a young soldier still learning the art of guiding a K9, tried his best. He shouted louder, repeated the hand signs, even encouraged Rex with treats, but nothing seemed to work. The other trainers on the field would shake their heads and whisper among themselves. To them, Rex was a failure. Every failure by Rex felt heavier than the one before. The training program was strict and mistakes were not tolerated for long. The officers expected the dogs to obey instantly, because in real missions even 1 second of delay could mean the difference between life and death. The young handler, named Carter, often felt embarrassed when Rex would stumble. During group drills, Carter would lower his head as the others laughed quietly. Some of the soldiers joked that Rex should be sent back to a shelter, that he was not meant for this kind of work. Those words cut deep into Carter's heart, because he saw something different in Rex's eyes. There was strength there, and a hidden spark, as if the dog was waiting for something or someone. Carter could not explain why, but he believed Rex's story was not as simple as it looked. One morning, the commander of the training base stood at the edge of the field, his arms crossed and his expression hard. He watched the drills closely, noting every movement, every mistake. When Rex stumbled again and refused to move during an obstacle test, the commander's patience broke. He called Carter over and told him plainly that Rex might not be worth the effort. Resources were limited and every dog had to prove its value. Carter listened quietly, his heart sinking as the commander warned him that Rex was on his last chance. If the dog failed again, he would be dismissed from the program. Carter nodded respectfully, but inside he felt a storm of emotions. He did not want to lose Rex, not like this. That night, Carter sat in the small kennel beside Rex. The moonlight filtered through the narrow window, casting shadows on the concrete floor. Rex lay on the ground, his head resting on his paws, eyes fixed on Carter as if he understood everything. Carter stroked Rex's fur gently and whispered to him. He spoke not as a trainer to a dog, but as a friend to another being who carried weight in his heart. "I know you can do this, Rex," Carter said softly. "I can see it in you. You're not weak, you're not broken. I don't know your past, but I know you're meant for something more." Rex lifted his head slightly and gave a low, soft bark, almost like an answer. Carter smiled, though his eyes carried worry. Tomorrow would be another test, and failure would mean the end. The next morning, the training yard was even more tense. Word had spread that Rex was on the verge of being removed, and many handlers gathered to watch. They were curious, almost eager to see if the so-called failure dog would finally prove himself or stumble once again. Carter tightened the leash and gave Rex a gentle pat before stepping onto the field. His heart beat fast, and though he tried to remain calm, sweat formed on his brow. The whistle blew and the drills began. Dogs leapt over walls, crawled under nets, and dashed across fields with speed and precision. When Rex's turn came, Carter gave the first signal, but as expected, Rex froze. His paws remained planted on the ground. His eyes flicked nervously from side to side, and his body trembled slightly. Laughter rippled through the crowd of onlookers. Carter's face burned with shame. Still, Carter did not give up. He called again, shouted louder, repeated the hand signal, but Rex only took a few confused steps forward before stopping again. The commander sighed heavily and turned to his officers, muttering that this was the last straw. But Carter, refusing to quit, knelt down on one knee and looked Rex in the eye. For a moment, the noise of the field seemed to fade. "You can do this," Carter whispered. "I trust you." He released the leash slightly, giving Rex more space, but the dog still hesitated. Something was missing, something Carter could not provide, though he wished with all his heart that he could. He felt helpless, caught between hope and despair. The other dogs continued their drills, showing off their strength while Rex stood still, his ears twitching as though he was waiting for a different sound, a signal Carter did not know. Soldiers began to shake their heads, already convinced of the outcome. Some looked at their watches, expecting the commander to announce Rex's dismissal any second. But Carter stayed by Rex's side, refusing to walk away. Even if this was the end, he wanted Rex to know he was not alone. In that moment, Carter's bond with Rex deepened. Failure or not, this dog mattered to him. As the sun rose higher, casting sharp light across the yard, Rex gave one last attempt. He dashed forward suddenly, surprising Carter, but then stopped halfway through the course, confused again. The laughter grew louder, and Carter lowered his head, his hope nearly gone. Yet deep inside, he could not shake the feeling that Rex's story was not finished. Something bigger was waiting, something hidden in the shadows of Rex's past, and though no one else could see it, Carter held on to that belief like a flame in the darkness. He whispered to himself almost as a prayer, "There's more to you, Rex. One day they'll see it too." That day was not yet here, but the story of Rex was only beginning. The sun rose again over the military training base, casting long shadows across the wide field where the K9 dogs were tested every morning. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and discipline. Every corner of the camp echoed with the sharp commands of trainers, the sound of whistles, and the heavy breathing of dogs running at full speed. These animals were more than dogs. They were soldiers in their own way, prepared to save lives in missions where even humans might hesitate. But while most of the dogs were improving day by day, one continued to struggle. Rex, the dark-furred German shepherd, remained a puzzle that no one could solve. Rex's handler, Carter, walked beside him with a heavy heart. The memory of yesterday's failure clung to him like a shadow he could not escape. He had seen the disappointment in the commander's eyes, heard the whispers of other trainers, and felt the sting of laughter when Rex froze in the middle of the drills. Carter tried to push those voices aside, but deep inside he knew the truth. Rex was only one step away from being dismissed. That thought filled him with dread. The dog was not just a trainee under his care anymore. He had become a companion, a silent friend who looked at him with eyes full of stories Carter did not yet understand. When Carter reached the yard, he noticed the atmosphere was different. Soldiers stood in groups, whispering to one another. Some leaned on the fence with folded arms, watching Rex with a mix of curiosity and pity. They were not there just for their own training. They had come to witness what might be Rex's last chance. A few of them smirked, already certain of the outcome. "That dog won't last another day," one of them muttered. Carter heard it, but he stayed silent. He bent down to adjust Rex's harness and stroked his fur gently. "Don't listen to them," he whispered. "You're stronger than they know." The whistle blew and training began. Dogs surged forward, racing through the obstacle courses like flowing water. They leapt through hoops, scaled wooden walls, and followed their handlers with sharp obedience. Each successful drill earned nods of approval from the commanders. Then came Rex's turn. Carter's voice rang out firm and clear, but once again Rex froze. His paws pressed against the dirt, his body trembling as though torn between moving forward and holding back. Carter repeated the command, louder this time, but Rex only took a few hesitant steps before stopping again. The commander's face tightened in irritation. He turned to his officers, shaking his head. "This is wasting our time," he muttered. One officer scribbled something on a clipboard, already preparing the report that would mark Rex as unfit. Carter felt his throat tighten. He wanted to defend Rex, to shout that there was something different about him, but the words stuck in his chest. He knew excuses would not save the dog. Only results mattered here. After training, Carter led Rex back to the kennels. The laughter and whispers from others echoed behind him. "Weakest link," someone said. "Should have been cut weeks ago." Carter kept walking, his hand firmly on Rex's leash, pretending not to hear, but each word pierced him. Once inside the quiet kennel, he sat on the floor beside Rex. The dog lowered his head into Carter's lap, his warm breath brushing against Carter's arm. For a moment, the young handler felt all the frustration melt away. "You're not broken," Carter whispered. You're waiting for something, aren't you? Something I don't understand yet." That night, Carter wrote in his small notebook, the one he kept hidden under his bed. He wrote about Rex, about the strange way the dog looked around during drills as if searching for a sound no one else could hear. He wrote about the sharp intelligence in Rex's eyes, the kind that did not match his failures. "It's like he belongs to someone else," Carter scribbled. "Like he's waiting for the right person to call him." Carter closed the notebook and stared out of the window where the stars glimmered in the silence. His heart was heavy with fear of what tomorrow might bring. The next day, the pressure grew even heavier. The commander announced during the morning meeting that Rex had only one final chance left. If he failed again, he would be permanently removed from the program. The words echoed like a hammer in Carter's mind. Other handlers nodded, some relieved that the burden of Rex would soon be lifted from the unit. To them it was simple: keep only the strong, discard the weak. But to Carter, the thought of Rex being taken away felt like betrayal. Throughout the day, Carter worked harder than ever. He practiced simple drills with Rex away from the others, using softer commands, encouraging him with calm words instead of harsh shouts. Sometimes Rex responded, sometimes he didn't. There were moments when the dog's ears perked up at a sound far away, and he would stand straighter, as if expecting something. Then the moment would pass and he would slump again, confused and hesitant. Carter noticed these changes and thought deeply about them, but he could not find the answer. What was Rex hearing? What was he waiting for? By evening, Carter felt drained. Sweat clung to his forehead, his arms ached from repetition, and his heart carried the heavy weight of doubt. Sitting in the kennel once again, he leaned against the wall and spoke aloud to Rex. "I don't know what's wrong, buddy. I don't know what you need. But I know you don't deserve to be thrown away." Rex licked his hand, a quiet gesture of comfort. Carter closed his eyes and let out a long sigh. He did not realize that outside the kennel, a pair of boots had stopped listening. Unseen by Carter, an older Navy SEAL had returned to the base that evening. His steps were calm, his eyes steady, and his presence carried a quiet authority. He watched from the shadows, saying nothing yet. Something about the way Rex moved, the way his ears twitched, caught the SEAL's attention. But for now, he remained silent, observing. The following morning, the final test was announced. Every soldier gathered by the training yard, their eyes fixed on Rex and Carter. Some looked curious, others mocking, and a few genuinely sympathetic. The commander's voice was sharp as he reminded Carter that this was Rex's last chance. The young handler nodded firmly, hiding the fear that twisted inside him. He bent down, looked Rex in the eyes, and whispered, "Today we fight for your place here. Don't give up, please." As the whistle blew, the dogs rushed into action once more. One by one they leapt, dashed, and obeyed. Finally, it was Rex's turn. Carter gave the command, his heart pounding like a drum. Rex froze again. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Carter's stomach sank, but he refused to give up. He tried again, louder, more desperate, but Rex stayed still. The commander began to rise from his chair, already certain of the outcome. Soldiers shook their heads, whispering that the dog was finished. But then, in the silence that followed, the sound of a sharp whistle pierced the air. Not from Carter, not from the trainers, but from the side of the field where the older SEAL now stood. Rex's head shot up instantly, his eyes blazing with recognition. His body straightened, his tail stiffened, and for the first time he looked alive. Truly alive. The crowd froze, stunned by the sudden change. Carter stared in disbelief, realizing that something extraordinary had just begun. And so, the chapter of doubt and failure closed with a spark of hope, though no one yet understood the full story behind that whistle. The sharp sound of the whistle cut through the morning air like a blade. For a moment, the entire training yard fell silent. Trainers who had been ready to laugh, officers who had been prepared to write Rex off, and even Carter himself, all froze. Every eye turned toward the direction of the sound. There, standing calmly with one hand in his pocket and a whistle still between his lips, was a tall man dressed in the simple but unmistakable uniform of a Navy SEAL. His presence alone seemed to command respect. Soldiers straightened unconsciously, whispers spread like a wave, and Carter felt his heart skip a beat. He had not seen this man before, yet something about him carried weight, like he had walked through storms that others could only imagine. Rex's reaction, however, was what stunned everyone the most. The moment the whistle sounded, Rex's posture changed completely. His ears perked up, his body tensed, and his eyes locked onto the man as though he had just found the one thing he had been waiting for all along. Without hesitation, Rex leapt into motion, running the course with a speed and precision that no one had ever seen from him. He scaled the wall, darted through the tunnel, and weaved through the poles without a single mistake. Carter's jaw dropped, unable to believe this was the same dog who had frozen so many times before. The crowd murmured louder now, their earlier laughter replaced by shock. Trainers stared with wide eyes, some even stepping closer to see if what they were witnessing was real. The commander, who had already been preparing to dismiss Rex from the program, leaned forward with narrowed eyes. His disbelief was clear, but he said nothing, choosing instead to watch the transformation unfold. Carter, meanwhile, felt his chest swell with hope. He didn't understand what had just happened, but he knew this was the moment he had been waiting for. The proof that Rex was not a failure. The seal did not speak at first. He only gave a small nod as Rex completed the course, his eyes steady and calm. When the dog returned to his side, Rex stood tall, his tail straight, his gaze sharp. It was as if the dog had been waiting for that single whistle all along. Carter rushed forward, his face full of questions, but before he could speak, the seal raised a hand slightly, signaling patience. His voice was deep, controlled, and calm as he finally spoke. "This dog doesn't respond to your commands because you're not speaking his language." The soldiers exchanged confused looks. Carter blinked, unsure what the man meant. The seal bent down and gave another soft whistle, followed by a subtle hand signal. Instantly, Rex obeyed, sitting, standing, rolling, and then charging forward with perfect timing. The precision was flawless, the obedience absolute. Gasps rippled through the crowd again. It was like watching a completely different animal. Carter's mind raced. How is this possible? The commander stepped forward, his tone edged with authority. "Who are you?" he asked. The seal straightened, his expression calm but unreadable. "Just someone who's worked with him before," he replied. His words only deepened the mystery, making the onlookers even more curious. The soldiers whispered rapidly now. Had this man trained Rex before? Was Rex not truly failing but simply misunderstood? Carter felt a mix of relief and confusion. He wanted answers, but he also felt a surge of gratitude toward the man who had just saved Rex from dismissal. After the demonstration, the commander ordered a short break. The crowd slowly dispersed, though many stayed close, still whispering about what they had just seen. Carter walked up to the seal, his voice low but full of urgency. "Sir, who are you? And how do you know Rex?" The seal glanced at him, his gaze sharp but not unkind. "Names don't matter right now," he said. "What matters is that this dog was never trained for your drills. He was trained for something else, something different. He responds to trust, to signals, not just to shouted commands." Carter felt his throat tighten. So that was it. Rex wasn't broken. He wasn't unfit. He had simply been trained in a way none of them understood. Can you help me with him?" Carter asked, his voice almost pleading. The seal studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "I'll guide you. But understand this, Rex is not just any dog. He carries history with him. You need to earn his trust, not force his obedience." The following days changed everything. The seal stayed at the base, not as a loud presence, but as a quiet shadow guiding Carter and Rex. He taught Carter how to use subtle hand signals, how to whistle with precision, how to calm his energy instead of letting desperation control him. At first, Carter struggled. His natural instinct was to shout commands louder when Rex hesitated, but the seal corrected him, teaching him patience instead. "He doesn't need your anger," the seal explained. "He needs your belief." Slowly, Rex responded. Each day his movements grew sharper, his hesitation lessened, and his confidence bloomed. The other handlers watched in astonishment, no longer mocking but curious. They began to respect the bond forming between Carter and Rex. The commander, though still stern, could not deny the progress. The whispers of weakest link faded, replaced by murmurs of admiration. But more than anyone, Carter was the one most transformed. He realized that Rex had never been the problem. The problem had been misunderstanding. Rex was waiting for someone who knew his language, and now Carter was learning to speak it. The seal rarely spoke of his past, but Carter caught hints in his eyes and the way he looked at Rex with something deeper than simple recognition. It was as though the two shared a bond forged long before this training field, in places Carter could only imagine. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the field emptied, Carter finally asked the question that had been burning inside him. "Sir, did you train Rex before? Was he your dog?" The seal was silent for a long moment. His hand rested gently on Rex's head, his eyes distant, almost haunted. Finally, he said, "We've been through battles together. He saved my life more than once. When I was injured, they reassigned him. But he never forgot. That's why he's been waiting. Not for commands, for a bond. Carter felt chills run through him. Suddenly, everything made sense. Rex hadn't been failing, he had been searching. Searching for the one person who understood him completely. And in that instant, Carter realized he was standing in the middle of something much bigger than just training drills. This was about loyalty, about history, about a connection forged in fire. From that day forward, every whistle carried meaning. Every drill became smoother, stronger, and filled with purpose. Rex was no longer the dog everyone mocked. He was a soldier, a partner, and a living symbol of loyalty that refused to be broken by time or circumstance. The unit that once doubted him now watched with respect. And Carter, who had once been on the edge of despair, now stood taller, knowing that together with Rex, and with the quiet guidance of the SEAL, he was part of something extraordinary. The stage was set for what came next. The whispers of failure had been silenced, but a new story was only beginning, one that would reveal just how deep Rex's loyalty and training truly ran. The days that followed were unlike anything Carter had experienced before. The presence of the Navy SEAL on the base changed everything. He did not shout or draw attention to himself, but wherever he stood, people noticed. His movements were calm, his words were few, but his authority was undeniable. Soldiers who were usually quick to laugh or criticize Rex now stayed quiet when the SEAL was near. It was as if his silence carried more weight than the commander's loudest orders. For Carter, it was both humbling and inspiring. He realized quickly that this man was not just another soldier. He was someone who had walked through battles most people could never imagine. Someone whose life experience was carved into his very presence. Rex, however, was the one most changed by the SEAL's arrival. The dog seemed reborn, carrying himself with pride, moving with a confidence no one had ever seen before. Every time the SEAL whistled, Rex responded as if no hesitation had ever existed. He moved like water flowing through the course, climbing, leaping, weaving, and stopping with sharp precision. Carter could barely believe it was the same dog he had struggled with for weeks. To the others, it was like watching a ghost awaken, a legend hidden inside an ordinary form. One afternoon, after another flawless performance, Carter finally asked the question that had been heavy on his chest. "Sir, who are you really? What is Rex to you?" The SEAL stood silently for a moment, his eyes fixed on Rex as the dog sat calmly at his side. Then in a voice low but steady, he began to speak. "Years ago, Rex was more than a trainee. He was my partner. We were deployed together on missions that required silence, precision, and trust. He was trained to respond to whistles, to signals that only he and I understood. We worked behind enemy lines where a single sound could mean discovery. He learned to read me, to move when I moved, to stay still when I stayed still. He was not just a dog. He was a soldier, and he saved lives more times than I can count." Carter listened with wide eyes, his heart racing. The other soldiers who overheard grew quiet, leaning closer, drawn into the story. The SEAL's words carried no boast, only truth. He continued, "On one mission, we were ambushed. Rex warned me seconds before it happened. He pulled me down, gave me those extra breaths of time that saved my life. But I was injured. They pulled me out of the field and Rex was reassigned. They said he could keep serving. But what they didn't understand was that his loyalty had been given once and once only. To me, the silence after his words was heavy. For the first time, Carter understood why Rex had failed so many drills. It wasn't that he couldn't do them. It was that he wouldn't do them for just anyone. His loyalty had been so strong, so unshakable that he had been waiting, silently and stubbornly, for the one man who had earned his trust. The SEAL looked at Carter now, his eyes sharp. "You see, this dog doesn't respond to commands shouted in fear or frustration. He responds to trust, to respect. He will not move for someone who treats him as just another tool. He is more than that." Carter felt his throat tighten. In that moment, he realized how much Rex had been trying to tell him all along. Not through words, but through silence, through his hesitation, through his searching eyes. Rex had not been broken. He had been waiting. The following days became a period of learning for Carter. The SEAL began to teach him the silent signals, the whistles, and the calmness required to guide Rex. At first, Carter struggled. His natural instinct was to push harder when Rex hesitated, to raise his voice to show urgency. But the SEAL stopped him each time. Patience, he said firmly. He mirrors your energy. If you panic, he panics. If you calm yourself, he will calm too. Slowly, Carter began to change. He stopped shouting so much. He stopped treating Rex as a problem to be fixed. Instead, he started to listen, to watch, to feel. He noticed the small movements of Rex's ears, the way his eyes flicked before he moved, the way his body tensed before a decision. He learned to move with Rex, not against him. And to his astonishment, Rex responded. Their bond deepened with each passing day. Carter felt himself not only growing as a handler, but also as a person. The other soldiers noticed too. Where once they had mocked Rex, now they whispered in awe. They saw the dog leaping over walls, moving with grace, and completing drills with near perfection. The commander himself could not deny the transformation. During one inspection, he muttered under his breath, "This is not the same animal we nearly dismissed." His tone was not mocking now. It was respectful. One evening, after a long day of training, Carter sat with the seal and Rex by the edge of the yard. The sky burned orange with the setting sun, and the world seemed calm for the first time in weeks. Carter finally spoke the words that had been pressing inside him. "Why are you helping me, sir?" "You could have just taken Rex back. He's clearly yours." The seal gave a small smile, though his eyes carried a shadow of sadness. "I can't take him back. My time in the field is done. But his isn't. He still has strength, still has purpose. And you remind me of myself when I was younger. You see him not as a tool, but as a partner. That is why I trust you." Carter's chest swelled with emotion. To be trusted by a man like this was an honor beyond words. He looked at Rex, who sat between them, loyal and strong. For the first time, Carter felt certain he could carry this responsibility. He would not let Rex down. As the training days continued, Rex's reputation grew. He was no longer the dog soldiers laughed at. He became the one they pointed to with respect, the one whose story was whispered in admiration. The bond between him and Carter grew so strong that even without the seal's whistle, Rex began to follow Carter's lead with confidence. It was as if Rex had finally accepted that his loyalty could be shared, that Carter had earned his place beside him. But beneath the pride and progress, a deeper truth hung in the air. The seal knew that loyalty like Rex's could not be easily transferred. It had taken weeks of patience, and it would take even more tests in the future. Yet he also knew that Carter had something rare, a heart that saw beyond drills, beyond failure, beyond appearances. That was the key to unlocking Rex's true strength. The stage was set for the next chapter. Rex was no longer the failing dog. He was ready, waiting, and standing tall once again. The whispers of dismissal had been silenced, but whispers of admiration had begun to spread. Soon the world would see that what had been called weakness was, in truth, a hidden strength forged in loyalty, sacrifice, and trust. The morning of the final evaluation came with a heavy silence over the training base. Everyone knew this day would decide Rex's future. Just weeks ago, many had written him off as useless, a waste of time and resources. Now the same people stood at the edges of the training yard, waiting to see what he would become. The whispers were different this time. There was no laughter, no mocking. Instead, there was curiosity and even respect. Soldiers who had once doubted Rex now leaned forward, eager to witness what the dog could do. Carter stood tall beside Rex, his hand resting gently on the dog's harness. His heart raced, but his face carried calm determination. He remembered everything the Navy SEAL had taught him, the patience, the signals, the belief in trust over control. He bent down slightly, looking into Rex's sharp eyes. "We've got this," he whispered. Rex's ears twitched as though he understood perfectly. The SEAL stood a short distance away, silent but watchful. He no longer needed to guide directly. He had passed the responsibility on, and now it was Carter's turn to prove he was worthy. The commander gave the signal, and the drills began. One by one, dogs and handlers completed their tasks. When it was Rex's turn, Carter took a deep breath and gave the first-hand signal paired with a soft whistle. Instantly, Rex surged forward. His body moved with precision and grace, leaping over the wall, crawling low through the tunnels, weaving through poles without hesitation. The speed and accuracy stunned the crowd. This was not the same dog they had once laughed at. This was a soldier in every sense. Gasps and murmurs spread as Rex cleared every obstacle flawlessly. Carter felt pride swell in his chest, but he stayed calm, moving with Rex step by step, giving the signals he had practiced for days. By the end of the course, Rex stood tall, chest heaving, but his eyes shining with purpose. The silence that followed lasted only a moment before the yard erupted into applause. Soldiers who had once mocked him now clapped with genuine admiration. Some even cheered his name. The commander stepped forward, his stern expression softened. He looked at Rex, then at Carter, and finally at the seal. "This dog is no failure," he declared. "He is one of the finest we've seen." His voice carried weight, and every soldier present knew this moment was history in the making. Carter lowered his head in respect, but inside, his heart burned with pride. He had always believed in Rex, and now the world could see why. After the drills ended, Carter walked Rex back toward the edge of the yard where the seal waited. For a moment, the three of them stood together, young handler, seasoned warrior, and loyal dog. The seal knelt down, running his hand through Rex's fur. "You did well," he said softly. Rex licked his hand, a gesture of deep recognition. Then the seal looked at Carter. "He's yours now. Remember what I told you, don't command him with fear. Lead him with trust. And never forget he's more than just a dog. He's a partner." Carter nodded firmly. "I won't forget, sir. I'll protect him the way he protects me." The seal gave a rare smile, one that carried both pride and sadness. His time with Rex had come full circle. Though his own days in the field were over, he knew the dog he had once trusted with his life was in good hands. He turned away, leaving quietly as was his way. There were no long speeches, no grand farewells. Just the quiet dignity of a man who had done his duty and moved on. As weeks turned into months, Rex's legend grew within the unit. He became known as the dog who once failed every drill but rose to become a symbol of resilience. Soldiers began to look up to Carter as well, seeing in him a young leader who had learned patience and strength from both Rex and the seal. Together, they joined missions where Rex's instincts saved lives, detecting danger, warning of threats, and moving with silent precision. Each time, Carter trusted him more, and Rex rewarded that trust with unshakable loyalty. One particular mission tested them deeply. The team moved into unfamiliar territory, silent and careful. Suddenly, Rex stopped, his body tense, his ears pointed forward. Carter didn't hesitate. He signaled the team to halt. Moments later, they discovered a hidden trap ahead that could have cost lives. The soldiers looked at Rex with awe, realizing once again that this was no ordinary dog. Carter patted his side gently, whispering, "Good job, partner." The bond between them had now reached a level where words were almost unnecessary. They moved as one, guided by trust and instinct. Back at the base, stories spread about Rex and his handler. Young recruits whispered his name, inspired by the tale of the dog who had gone from disgrace to glory. The older soldiers spoke of him with respect, acknowledging that what they once called weakness had been strength all along, loyalty that would never bend, trust that could not be broken. Even the commander, who had once nearly dismissed him, now praised him openly as one of their greatest assets. Carter, however, never let pride turn into arrogance. He remembered the nights when he sat in the kennel, whispering to Rex, believing in him when no one else did. He remembered the guidance of the seal, who had taught him that leadership was not about control, but about connection. Most of all, he remembered the moment that sharp whistle first pierced the air, unlocking the bond that had been waiting all along. Years later, the memory of Rex would still inspire the soldiers who trained at that base. His story was told not as one of failure, but as one of hope, patience, and trust. He was remembered as the dog who needed only one whistle to reveal his true self, the dog who stood tall beside those he trusted, the dog who taught everyone that greatness often hides beneath doubt until the right moment comes. For Carter, the journey with Rex was more than just about training a dog. It was about learning to see beyond mistakes, to believe when no one else would, and to understand that true strength comes from loyalty and trust. Standing together in the quiet evenings after long days of missions, Carter would often pat Rex's side and whisper, "They thought you were broken, but you were just waiting. And I'm glad I waited with you." And Rex, with his calm eyes and steady presence, would sit beside him, no longer the dog who failed every drill, but the one who proved that patience, trust, and loyalty could turn doubt into legend.